to close your eyes. Bring your feet to the floor. Drop your shoulders. And bring your awareness to your breath. Don't change your breathing in any way. Simply allow your breath to breathe you. And as you begin to settle into your body and observing your breath, allow a wave, a warm wave of ocean water shower down over your physical body. And just imagine the sensations that are coming up as that beautiful, warm ocean water is doing for you. And in the back, I can almost hear the ocean coming in and going out. And with that ocean tide, allow it to take away any stressors of the day, any anxieties or checklists that you've been working on today, and let it go. And as that warm ocean water is restoring you and releasing any tensions that you're holding in the body, take a few more deep breaths. And as you inhale and exhale, let it out with a loud sigh. And then allow your eyes to gently open and lift the corners of your mouth upward.
Oh, sweet.
I swear to God, I was hearing the ocean. Did anybody else hear it? Unless it was a car driving by. I don't know, but. Oh, okay. So I know that Pam has been on calls after call today, but if you could take a few moments and tell us what planet
Sure.
is havoc.
Absolutely, I can. So Mars is retrograde, and Mars is in the sign of Aries, half of 2020. That's a very long time.
Wow.
For a planet to be in its natural sign. And one reason it's in so long, actually the reason it's in so long, is because it goes through this retrograde that will take us through election season and finally goes direct November 13th or 14th, depending on where you are on the planet. But it takes us out of the year 2020. But I see the most important thing we have to keep in mind about Mars in the sign of Aries, now that it's retrograde, is I have to bring up the last time in history that Mars was retrograde, solely in the sign of Aries, was 1941. And when it was retrograde in Aries was when the Germans started putting yellow stars on Jews, and the concentration camps began, and they marched into Russia, determined to conquer Russia, and Japan planned Pearl Harbor. So the big lesson with Mars retrograde is whoever is the aggressor, the confronter, the angry, is the one who loses every time. So we're all dealing with a kind of undercurrent of rage, anger, trauma, and we have to work with that and make it an engine. Make it an engine of where you believe you want to take that warrior energy. Because we can't, the best warriors are the ones who know why they're fighting, have a higher goal, and do not get thrown into petty anger. Their eye is directed on the loftier goal. And that's where we all are. And so as we deal with everything getting thrown at us, because it's continual, we will let others get hoist by their own petard. Do you know what the origin of that phrase is? What it means is I'll let Julienne tell. What is
It's
hoist
ship,
by
I
its
know
own?
it's from the maritime world and already back.
Yes, yeah, it's if you're not paying attention to what you're doing, you get swept off the ship and into sea. So we are seeing players on the world stage about to be hoisted by their own petard. And we need to gather our energy as light workers and help people use, because anger is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. Anger is a good thing. It stirs the fire within. It's just reactionary anger is a very bad thing. Then we're thrown. Then we're not working with our eye on where we want to go. My father used to say, when you get angry, you lose the argument. And he used to love to get me angry. He was such a good teacher. So anyway, we also have the new moon in Virgo coming up. And so we're in dark of moon period right now. Excellent time to close down everything you don't want to bring into the next lunar cycle and really focus on what you want to bring in new healing routines for yourself, for your clients, and for your loved ones. And your loved ones are anyone you pass on the street, anyone who there is so much fraught energy right now. And so it behooves us to bring us back into the present and get out of our own way, our ego way, and think about this is all so much bigger than us, me as an individual. It's all so much bigger than me. And I have to keep in mind, as Joan and I were talking earlier, the consciousness evolution that gets stirred by the revolution. And the revolution does not have to be a violent one, but it has to be a directive, assertive, and one that is not going to flinch in when things look difficult. So that's what's going on right now in a little piece.
Okay. All righty. In 25 words or less, I'm really expecting more people who actually did sign up on Eventbrite, but they'll come in when they can. And I just want to let everybody know that in October, Grisella is speaking on Akashic Records in October. November, Joan, you're speaking, aren't you? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and in December, Michelle Levy, who's also on the call, hi Michelle, is going to share with us how to use the labyrinth in healing, for healing, so yay. And I'm-
Well, Kathy, what I'm speaking on, I'm actually doing numerology of the year. And so it's a little different than just the medium work.
Okay, yes, 2021.
Yeah, we look at this year and next, yeah.
Okay, great, thank you for that.
Wow.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to that one.
Start preparing now, Joan, okay?
Huh?
Start preparing now. Okay, so I'm gonna turn it over to Julienne, who is our guest speaker. She's not a member of Westchester Holistic Network yet, but who knows? She may join us. But we met at another group that Cynthia shares every 2 weeks. We actually met at East Shell Center doing a Reiki workshop. So that's where we initially met. So I'm very happy to introduce Julienne.
Thank you. So it's a pleasure to be here. As way of reintroducing myself, I'm an applied storyteller, which is I use stories in my work when I'm coaching individuals on their professional development or their personal development. I use it in team situations to improve communication and productivity. And I also do keynotes and get up in front of groups to get them to listen, have some fun, and talk to each other. So the core of my message is always stories, and more importantly, having people tell their own stories, which I find an exciting thing. It's the most valuable part of my work and what I teach. Um, One of the things I started in the chat before we began was something I love to do, which is share your first name story. It's something I learned from a group I've studied with at Narrative. We use that in our workshops when we work together. So briefly just put a few words in the chat about where you got your first name from. And then we're a small enough group actually right now. Let's just do it out loud. Let's not worry about writing it.
Okay, well, I can start.
Yes.
But I have several first names.
Ah,
Of course, my first name that I was born with was Janet.
Mm.
And then I was bat mitzvahed in 2006, and I didn't have a Hebrew name, so I chose my name, and I chose the name Alona, which means oak tree.
Ah.
And what happened was in 2012, I had a dream that said I should start using the name Alona.
Hmm.
And I was at my husband's Universalist Unitarian service, and we talk about joys and concerns, and I spoke about it at this group, and everybody at that in the fourth UU calls me Alona. And so it started, it was really, and now I call myself Janet Alona because it was too much to kind of change it. But so that's the story of my first name.
Thank you. That has beautiful rhythm and flow, the way that those symbols come together. Who's next? Joan, sorry.
well, my mom used to say she wanted to call me Nancy, but I was born on St. Joan of Arc's day. So, we chose the saint. And I want to, Alona inspired me to talk about my spiritual name that I heard when I was 19. I always heard Jordania, and I used to write it, and then I liked having Dania. At 40, I was promoting my writing, performing it, and I actually used it, and it was printed up. But at the same time, not knowing I was going to become a psychic, I had that career burst, and I was on this show, Strange Universe, for 2 different careers and 2 different hairdos, curly and straight. And I realized then that I was getting more work as a psychic than performing the writing. So I had to stick with Joan. And very few people know I've always had this other name that I identified with, but she gave me the courage to share that.
Wonderful. I think it's so many interesting overlaps between our sharing and what I had shared before, having more than one first name and being called. Pamela, since I'm pointing to you because you're in my right corner here, so I'm pointing to you.
It's not a very long story.
It's okay.
I'm the oldest. My mother chose the name. Doesn't come from anywhere, hasn't gone anywhere. And actually, it's not a family name, which sort of suits an Aquarius. So, and my mother knew nothing about astrology. So there is nothing else there.
Mhm. So and she never shared what inspired her?
No, she was
Never.
looking for names that she thought she liked
Mm.
and names that were not usual.
Mhm.
I think at points she regretted that I was so unusual, but that was that was what she was calling in.
Well, it's a lovely
So
name.
she didn't want me to be ordinary.
Mm.
You did that right, doll. My mother's name was Dolly.
Cynthia?
Well, my parents named all of us in the family with a name beginning with C. So we start out with a C. Cynthia is relating to a moon goddess. So I kind of connect with that. The celestial ways, my far left tendencies, all of that. And I enjoy it. I like my name.
Michelle, I know you're muted. Can you weigh in, or you can put it in the chat after, so she's quiet?
You might hear a lot of noise. I can stop what I'm doing for just a minute. Hi. I'm cooking dinner. My kids are in an online class, so I'm trying to listen, but
Michelle.
I don't want to create noise. Thanks for having me.
Okay.
And nice to see you.
Okay.
I only know the translation. Michelle means gift from God. And I think it was just popular in 1974, and followed my older sister, Melissa, in a kind of harmonious way. And I know I would have been Michael if I was a boy. So they were pretty much into Michelle or Michael at the time. Now, but Sydney, I mean, it's my middle name that has more import or meaning for my family, where I was named after my grandfather, my maternal grandfather, Sydney.
Oh, lovely.
So that's where the meaning was weighted, on the middle name, which is interesting. I'm enjoying hearing everyone speak, and I'm so sorry I can't participate more, but I am listening.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for snippet
Thank
of
you.
seeing
Thank
you.
you.
So thank you so much. Appreciate
My
it.
pleasure. Thank you too.
Kathy? Kathy?
Yeah. So Kathy is actually my birth name, not Kathleen, not Catherine, as a good Catholic would have a saint's name. And so it's Kathy, and I absolutely hated it throughout my childhood. It doesn't much bother me now when I hear my name, Kathy. But I was curious, Pam, to hear you say that usually Aquarians will have a name that is after a relative of some sort, or I may have.
That's not an Aquarian thing. I said that mine was not like anybody. So that's an Aquarian thing.
Oh, that
To
it's not
be
like anybody?
unusual in the family is very Aquarian.
I see.
Unless you come from a family of Aquariuses.
No.
Does that make sense?
I was named after two aunts, Aunt Cathy, Catherine, and Aunt Julia, Kathy Jewel. Jewel is my middle name.
Oh, lovely.
So, yeah, that's my shtick, and I'm sticking to it.
But and Joan, yes.
I just wanted to add that now nobody under age 40 can pronounce my name. They say Joanne, Jones, and John. And it's impossible to explain because my name was popular in the 50s and 60s, but no one knows. They just call me Joanne when they see it written, and Jones, and the Japanese call me John. And so I'm having trouble with my first name because nobody could say it. It's very unusual that I get this all the time. The older people understand it, but the younger people, you can't say, did you ever hear of Joan Baez, Joni Mitchell, or Joan Crawford? No.
See, this is like sensitivity for me because I've spent my whole life like Julienne, they always add vowels to it when people hear it.
Yeah.
A,
You
and E's
understand?
and
Yeah.
U's. And I thought Jones of the world were having it easy. I'm sorry. Well, tonight, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the elements of storytelling using and story sharing using stories as I go. I'm going to give some key elements and some things I've learned along the way that I think will help and may fit into even our conversations and how we communicate and connect with each other. So I am going to uh, share, first of all, an expression. So, since the beginning of time, because stories are one thing that all cultures share, we're wired for stories. Stories help us with our memory and how to remember, because if you put facts and emotions together, it fuses into a memorable thing. So, the expression in story sharing is sharing the fire, because that's basically where most of the communication was happening at, around places of warmth over time. So now I'm going to say recreate that feeling by huddling around the light coming from your Zoom rectangles and gather close. And we're going to build on the title Kathy and I came together, which is Story, Our Healing Connections Experiences, and Harvest Our Lessons Learned. So that's our story prompt for this evening. And I'm going to start sharing a few postcards, as it were, and build on that one key phrase we've heard ever since we could listen to a story is once upon a time. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. So beautiful Hudson, one of my favorite places.
Mm.
And there's our title. And one of the things I shared about is the story and the light that we all give to each other when we're in the act of storytelling. And on to our once upon a time. Once upon a time, in a place called March 2020, people were told that they had to turn themselves into islands. We spent time thinking about what we needed to do to keep safe. We reached out to people we cared about, but we had to keep our distance. So we turned ourselves into human rectangles and visited Zoom a lot as we endeavored to create connections. We went inward. We cast our nets out onto the cyber sea and discovered treasures and messages of care and healing insights. And we found others who were on a quest the same as we were. So we formed virtual villages, found experiences that helped us balance, and we began to share the fire and the power of our stories. So that was some impressions that came to my mind when I was thinking about the last 6 months. Ironically, my 6 months started with the visit to the Holistic Healing Center with Kathy and Cynthia's event, which was quite special, and what I've learned since then. I want to ask you to take a moment just to jot a few things that might have popped into your head about a memory or an occurrence that happened, and just hold it there. Just hold it there. We're not going to move on it. And don't edit and censor anything that comes to mind. Sometimes these pictures come to mind for a reason. Just a couple of words.
This is in the past 6 months?
Whenever. I don't believe in editing, censoring anything that comes to mind, but just any impressions that came when you were listening. And we'll have a chance to use it or not, or just reflect after. So moving on. We use the word so often, and it's in our language, but I'd love to hear people's perspective of what makes a story.
Mm.
So when you hear story, what do you think? Joan?
Beginning, middle, end, and message.
I saw another hand in the corner of a Zoom. Kathy?
An experience.
Okay. With me, it's a hero, somebody who's gone on a journey. And there's a lesson usually. So it's interesting to see. And then the fact it's common throughout so many cultures always was fascinating for me. In my work, I always cite one gentleman named Robert Dickman, who's an organizational storyteller and communications person. And I'll read a quote here for a minute. And it looks a little different than the slides that I've been using because I include this in every presentation that I've done in any workshop. And I'll tell you why in a minute. So story sharing is for making purpose-driven connections. It's not just for entertainment. It's story sharing is not storytelling. It's a subtle difference, but an important one, because we believe in what makes story have more impact is that they be remembered and shared and retold. So it's stories for purpose that we're looking to do. I'm sure you bring that into your practice when you're using an example. I use it in my coaching where there's a mission behind what we're doing. We're not just sharing it for entertainment. Now, Robert Dickman is a wonderful prompt for saying the power of Zoom and connection, a pre-Zoom of connection. And this came out of a LinkedIn message. Many years ago, when I was starting to look at storytelling and using it for groups and training, I was looking around LinkedIn. I thought somebody's got to be doing this work that I can talk to or look at what they're doing. And I found this gentleman, sent him a message, and lo and behold, he responded back to me. And not only that, he gave me time on the phone, which was quite a gift to a stranger. And then he said these words that would always remind me to always be ready for your camera moment. He said, do you have a do you have a camera in your Zoom? Because in that midst of that conversation, I was preparing for a presentation and a contest. And I was explaining the work I was doing. And he goes, I want to see it. So out of this 10-minute conversation out of the blue, I am now walking around my house with my laptop trying to get good lighting so he can see me present. But aside from the surprise and the gift of this coaching, he asked two of the most important questions I have ever heard regarding story sharing, and I've used it all the time. How do you want to receive your audience, and how do you want them to receive you? And it is a sentence that travels every day as we lead. The other group I want to call forth that has been an amazing, important part of learning the technique of story sharing is a group called Narrative. And there is a author, Murray Nozzle, and I always have the book, and you can see there's lots of Post-its, powered by storytelling. And in it, Murray Nozzle talks about his methodology. And through a series of amazing events, I've come to work with them and work with some projects with them and work with one of their leaders, Jerome DeRoy. And in their work, they stress a lot about being prepared for listening when we go into a situation, whether it's just a conversation or it's sharing a story. And one of the things we do in our workshops and even in conversations with narrative members is sharing very much like we did in the beginning of our call, what was in our head and may have gotten in the way of our listening. Pamela talked about your flooding in the roof and the rain coming in. We were talking about doctors and appointments and things that were happening. So for a minute, just write down what's might be getting in the way of your listening. And this part is a whole major exercise, but we're just going to do a snippet in this moment. So one of the important lessons, and I'm sure this is something that comes to you very naturally as intuitive women who are sensitive and are really learned in the craft of really paying attention to the body and the mind. But I found that getting ready for listening can be such a wonderful way to build a conversation and trust, because you're helping that person get centered, even if they don't share everything that's in their mind. To just show awareness, and that when they're ready to show up, they're ready to pay attention. So it was a very good thinking and acting prompt to use in our everyday lives. One of the key lessons I've had out of the many of working with narrative is that stories depend on a listener. Without a listener, there's no shared story. And the beautiful analogy they have in their work is that this experience is like a vessel, like that vase we have in the picture. And I may share stories, or you may share stories tonight, but the experience is going to be unique because our situation is unique and we'll never be able to recreate it. And it depends on our relationship, and it depends on who's in the room and what is driving the experience. And the right story will appear. When I was looking for photos, I thought, well, this one kind of reminds me of our situation where we spent a lot of time indoor looking out windows, or if we were lucky, seeing gardens and things and collecting experiences that we couldn't always share directly. But as I was creating this slide, I realized I had a wonderful example of waiting for the story to appear. This summer, I was on a story workshop, international conference on Zoom that I got to attend, and then one of my groups participated in. And one of the women who were one of the presenters at one point talked about running a performance. And she invited this Native American person who was gifted in the art and craft of his storytelling. And he carried the stories of his people, of the nature, of the gods, of the history. And she invited him to this conference. And when he arrived, she said, "What story are you going to share?" And he answered her, "The one that needs telling."
Mhm.
So when he arrived, he was given the place of honor. And then he just sat there. And he sat there with his eyes closed for a very, very long time. So as I was listening to this story, I was listening to it with two ears. One ear was thinking, oh, the wisdom of this man. Oh, the depth of knowledge that he carries and the responsibility of his stories. The other ear was the Queen's girl who is going, I don't think I could have survived the stress of waiting for this man to surface with a story. I would have been worried. What if he went to sleep? What if he's not coming back? What if he comes up with nothing? Like, so I was like just sitting there, like the tension of that performance. But then when she said, when he woke up, he was like, aha, I have it. It's the right story. So hold on to that. That man's going to show up because he's an inspiration in a few minutes. So again, I guide you to the lesson of waiting and trusting yourself that the right comment or answer is going to come out in a conversation is something I think might not be unusual for the work you're doing. Does a moment come to mind that you can share about working
And
with
maybe
somebody
even
and
other
just
toys
waiting for
dipping
the
on the
answer?
seats.
Yes, I would. It's me, and I do have noise, but I would love to tell you because something special
Oh,
came to
good.
mind.
Fabulous.
Let's see. Am I showing also? I'm in such
Yes,
chaos.
I see the ceiling fan and you head.
So I had led a meditation, and I'll try to make the story short. I was after something when I delivered the meditation, but I had people close their eyes, relax. And the mantra I used or introduced was, who am I? Who am I? And we repeated several times. And I asked them to focus on like the felt sense that arose before the words came, the pre-verbal answer. And I also was just, the point of my answering was to talk about mantra. And when you repeat and repeat and repeat a question, and the next series I introduced was, how am I? How am I? And we talked about how you present to the world as you move through the world. So number one, repeating mantra brings different answers to the same question. And to me, that's awesome. Like Ho'oponopono, where you say, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. And the more you repeat it, you get a different, deeper answer to the same prompt. And that really turns me on. So I wanted to share that.
And I think what you're mentioning is also the waiting and being patient with the answer too.
And that pre-verbal, I told them, just because there aren't words doesn't mean we're not thinking. We're thinking with our bodies. There's so much thinking that's non-verbal, but we don't think of it as thinking. So I encourage them to understand, that ideas come from pre-verbal felt sense.
That
And to
resonates.
hone in on that, to rest there before speaking or writing.
Michelle, thank you, because that resonates with me, because in the earlier part of my career, I spent years and years recruiting and interviewing people, which is a way of gathering your story. And I used to work with a lot of engineers and finance and very logical. And I used to use the expression of, I need to let my body catch up to my brain when I couldn't put my head around what I was experiencing sometimes, or I couldn't verbalize why I thought somebody was wonderful and they had gifts. So it's almost like I was waiting for the shift and to make it verbal. And that doesn't always happen when you're working in a corporate situation. Yeah, you're supposed to come out with bulleted answers and everything succinct. But that just strikes a chord, that answer. So the waiting. The other part that is special in the story sharing, and another part of the learning from the narrative group, is setting an intention. It's coming into a situation or a story about what is your intention of the evening. When I started for this evening, I set an intention that I wanted to share some of my knowledge, share the experience, and also form a connection with this group and build on the connections. I've been having the opportunity to meet many of you on and off in the last few months. So to build on that and have that knowledge shared. So that is one thing that is so important in a conversation, whether you're having something with your partner or you're like, what's my intention of this debate, this conversation, etc., and as well as the stories. Today, we're going to be looking at knowing your beginning of your story, first off the bat, but know your ending is probably the most important thing of why you're taking the listener to this story and to that ending. What are you hoping to put across? And your why. That is the biggest question. Why are you sharing it? Why this story? Why now? What purpose does it serve? Likewise, in coaching, sometimes I might have a few edited stories or things that I've used in there, and it's figuring out whether it's, I'm talking to an individual or a group, is the timing and what is important and why does it need to be heard. And sometimes, like every good conversation, you have to mothball and say, not today. Shift an inspiration in the middle of a conversation, another story. And I've done that even on a stage with an example of thinking, I'm going to totally use something else in these next 5 minutes, and let's hope it works. But I think the audience always knows, whether it's an audience of 1 or an audience of 500, they know when you're being authentic and if you're speaking the truth. So it's in story sharing, it's not about getting every word pronounced correctly or edited. It's about sharing from the heart. And I'm looking for my screen to move forward. So it's now on us to capture a moment and do a little thing that I promised at the beginning, to harvest some of the experiences, us as caregivers, us as teachers and coaches, as practitioners, as family members, siblings. What was the harvested moment of this these last year or so, whatever you want to share? Again, it's not about creating a theatrical piece of work in a few minutes. It's about remembering something that comes to mind, like Michelle just said, listening to the nonverbal, why something's surfacing, and capturing it. So I am going to go back and visit my native Indian prompt that I'm used as an example earlier on, and say he was very important to me when I was creating this workshop tonight, because I always, think a lot about what stories and how I want to communicate and what's going to resonate with my group. So I was like, should I talk about Zoom experiences? In the last few months, I've been to a wedding, anniversaries, workshops, international conferences. I've interviewed people. What will make sense? And true to form, like that wise man said, the right story will appear. And for me, the bravest moment or the most impactful moment of the last few months out of many, was I was getting ready to attend a theatrical event. An actor, director, colleague of ours was giving a virtual show. And he said, before you log on to the Zoom, I want to make sure that all of you lean out your windows in New York, and at 7 o'clock, ring the bells and hit the pots. So I listened to that and I was like, man, I wish I was in New York. I live in Hartsdale. I said, that would be great if somebody did that. And I let that sit. And then I realized, well, why don't you do something? Instead of waiting for somebody else to do. So at first I took a moment and just went on Nextdoor, that neighborhood sharing thing, and said, oh, I want to do this. And isn't this great? And I met a few people that said, our apartment mile away is knocking on pots, or we're playing music at night. And that was great. And then I got my husband to come out with me, because he was just standing in the door when I went. The whole point of doing this, knocking the pots and doing something at 7, is that we actually leave our house and make some noise so people can hear us. So the first time we did it, we were all by ourselves, standing in front of our house in Hartsdale on a suburban street, hitting a pot and ringing a little dinner bell. I wrote to my neighbors. They said, one of them was a nurse, one was a doctor, and they said, that's great you're doing that, Jules, but we're at work. Thank you for thinking of us. The next time I did it, they were home. And then one person came out across the street. And then I went old school Queens, and I thought, if you're going to do this and drag your husband out here, do something. So I started to flyer the street based on one inspired conversation with a friend. In my house, I should have brought it upstairs, is an old cowbell that I got from one of my old neighbors in Queens. And she reminded me that Saturday Night Live, you should Google it, has a funny routine from Christopher Walken about there needs to be more cowbells. Well, my dears, that started a whole thing. Not only did I hit the streets every Tuesday morning for about 3 months on flyer, I put it down the street, across the street in the block. And that used to be my ritual every Tuesday to say thank you for being in this neighborhood. Now, if this was a Hollywood movie, at the end of my story, there would be chimes and bells going all over the neighborhood and, bands playing. But here was my gift. The man across the road, down the street from Pakistan came out of his house and would be waving on a Tuesday night. The neighbors who never came out of their house, and we hardly saw them for 3 years they're living here, not only came out, starting hitting pots. Kids across the street got their own cowbells. Another woman down the road was waving like she was waving in the ships into harbor. But the best moment was one day when I was in my mass with my hip extended so I could hand out flyers and put them in the mailbox. A woman walking her dog came by and said, "Are you the lady that's doing this every week?" She goes, "Do you know my daughter runs to the mailbox and looks what picture you've put out for the announcement for the week?" And that was the best gift to myself during this period of coming out of my comfort zone. And there you have it. So brave moments, crazy moments, good moments.
Jules,
Yes,
my husband lost his brother,
yes.
and he tends to keep feelings pretty much inside. We went for a long walk over at Untermeyer, and there were colorful strings on the tree, or a yarn on the tree. What is this? And it was for writing the name of someone that you've lost on a piece of paper, and you take that colorful string and you tie it to a particular tree. He welled up with a big sob and wrote Junior's name down and hung it on the tree. Feelings run deep. Men have maybe a harder time sometimes in getting it out, but I just felt so much for him and what he was going through and his loss. It just made me love him all the more for the love that he carried for his brother and to feel his loss.
Thank you. Thank you.
I guess I put a wet blanket, didn't I?
No, you don't have to fill in the space. It's a special thing. I was thinking about those rituals matter because we lost the opportunity to do traditional rituals in these last few months. But what you shared is important to find you were at the right place at the right moment and the right thing. I think that's such a special that you can't think your way through and say we're going to do X and it's going to happen. So that was special. And they were just there.
That is actually a traditional ritual. Day of the Dead, South American, Central American cultures, to write the name and tie a ribbon.
I misphrased how I said what I was saying, that a lot of us who have lost people couldn't go to the funerals that we've gone to or wakes. I knew about that part, but thank you, Pamela, for confirming and reconfirming that. Yes.
I just want to say one other thing. I don't know if you saw it, but I'm sitting outside, and now it's completely dark out here. The sun was out before, and the fire. I scanned to the fire briefly. So I'm sitting with my friend here, Zoomy friends, sitting around the fire. So I'll
That's
share that
great.
with you
I
for
love
another
the,
I
I
moment.
love
did
the,
see that.
yes, the analogy. Because I remember you talking about your chimneys the other day.
Chimenea, right.
Chimnea. It's beautiful.
So anybody, it doesn't.
I want to
feel
say
like,
that
yes.
fire is a great way to prepare to listen.
Mm.
Even if you light a candle, or sitting around a fire. I mean, way back to our primitive instinct. You know, this prepare to listen phrase that definitely resonated, and creating fire is a great gateway or preparation to listen.
Thank you. So one of the things I always say is the story sharing doesn't have to be in the moment. It's also what happens to our brain when we start to share these moments together. Things surface afterwards, and then also an appreciation. It's been wonderful. Even the sharings what Cynthia runs with the group, and Kathy has been part of it, and all of you, where those few minutes of connection, even though we're in these virtual screens, these boxes next to it, what an impact, and the words we carry forward. We don't always know we make a difference, I think, when we're doing those sharings. So Cynthia, shout out to you on that.
Thank you. Very touching.
Joan?
Well, COVID brought my neighborhood together. I live in front of a pond, and it's not the pavement, so we could walk on the path. And what happened was, and I've heard a lot of people tell me the animals came and they held us together. I lived here for quite a while. I never saw the baby geese. The town does have an ordinance to try to, shake the eggs or oil them. The two geese gave birth to 5 babies, and it brought everybody together. Some people were angry that the father goose was very protective, being like a daddy. Other people, like, to me, it became my soap opera. I had to go out and see the geese. They're growing so fast. I tried to talk to them and things like that. And then all of a sudden, all the neighbors who I didn't know my neighbors for years, and we're all talking about the geese. And some were giving food. I say, don't give the bread, but give the greens. And then one of the father goose, all of a sudden, and every day I would count the geese. So there's 7. And all of a sudden I was counting on 5. The father goose and the baby goose were gone. And we were all upset. Did it get run over? Did a coyote or whatever? And then a neighbor, when COVID was getting lighter, she had an outdoor little get together, and we were, and I felt that the animals brought us together, and we were all moved by this. And to me, they were I live alone, and he said, they brought me out of my shell and my worry. And it brought me to think about family, because I don't have, I have family, I'm moved by the woman who just did that story, because my brother-in-law just passed. So I was thinking how important family was, and it made me reminisce about my dad, a goose, and it was just something like life keeps going on, but yet seeing how an animal, life was so precious to these animals, and they were so protective. And some neighbors, my neighbor, the young one who the goose bit my dog, and she threw rocks at it, and she was so crazy. And I'm trying to talk to her about that, but everyone had a different perspective. But all the neighbors said, the geese that lived in front of our pond brought us together and gave us a story, because we were bored in the house. Even if we had projects, they gave us a story to go outside and see life. So that's my story, and it's from the geese.
That is special, but I think there are geese, and even in mythology, there's in the Irish mythology, the Celtic mythology, and the Viking, the geese are very symbolic.
The geese are very what?
Symbolic of souls.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
It's built in there. So I'm going to shift on to a little bit more of just an overview of lessons. Whoops, wait, I don't want to go that far. Yeah, hang on. So some of the things I wanted to share this evening was set an intention when we're doing a story sharing or even embarking into a conversation that we're hoping to have a connection with somebody. Believing that the right story will appear, that will resonate and speak to somebody. The questions of why this story and why this story now is an interesting prompt to keep with us. Knowing your beginning and ending, your first sentence and your last, where you want to take the person. And the one thing about your most important stories of your life, you can do the little commercial, the 30-second one, and you can build it up. But knowing where you want to take your audience is important. And then the notes, you want to do it as much in first person and bring it to life with elements and descriptive. Like, Joan, when you were talking about the geese, I could see you looking out the window and being at the pond and worrying about what the dog was doing and the neighbor that the dog was doing dog things, but they coexist. The questions I got from Robert Dickman that time of how do you want to receive your audience and how do you want them to receive you? What role do we want to play in that relationship? Descriptive sensory is always important, as I said before. There is no story without a listener. It's a very unique experience. And our story and listening fills a vessel, and we carry it with us. So your listening contributes to each other and the trust. And each story is a unique experience. So that's all I have to say. And then I did want to mention that there is a book coming out, totally different from today's topic, but it'll be out this month, I think, at the end of the month or beginning of October. It's the Learned It in Queens Communication Playbook, Winning Against Digital Distraction. It's humorous. It's takes a poke at all of our brains and what we're doing and not when we're having conversations. I have to say the whole thing is true. And it's based on a lot of others. So I've had some fun and a lot of collaboration with it. And that's where I show up in the universe with all these wonderful links that we have. So I'm going to take us back to my favorite slide out of all of these, which is the right story will appear, and say thank you. Kathy, you're muted.
Yeah, if I could.
Wait. I'm trying to unmute you. What's going on? Wait. What is going on?
I'm unmuted. I'm
Yes, you are.
unmuted.
Yes.
It's a control thing. It's you or me.
I know. You can have it back for sure.
Well, you give a little project of what came out of this isolation and this COVID thing, and what, and I'm going through my mind. I'm like, all these stories are going on, but that one of those last slides that you had all the points, and I started thinking, oh my God, one of the things that has come up is, how do I refigure myself? How do I remarket myself? I've been a teacher and I've been
Reinvent,
reinvent. Thank you, Joan. That's where your psychic comes in to help me out. How do I reinvent myself? And this virtual stuff has been. The discussion we had with Cynthia's group the other day of, the separation and the barrier of this screen and energy, and it's so much nicer to be together, and the hug, the tactile that we're missing, and again back to the virtual stuff. I'm like, okay, I have to learn how to teach online, how to use this Zoom format. And one of the questions you also had was, who am I? Or Michelle, who am I? And what am I feeling now, or whatever. But who am I? I wanted to put up something on my website of, well, who's Kathy Lipsky and what do I do? And so I did that. And as we're going through this whole process here this evening, I'm thinking to myself, okay, it's a story. Who am I? And the person who was with me trying to coach me was like, I felt like I was video shy. You know, like I need an agenda. I'm an agenda girl. I'm a note girl. I like to have things in front of me that I can talk off of. And it was so difficult for me to do and to tell my story. And she said, just speak from your heart. Speak from your heart.
Mm-hmm.
Who are you? What do you do? What are you doing? And why? And so I did, and I'd probably like to do it again, but it is up on my website.
Hey, Kathy. I think, that next question, how am I, should be incorporated into our bios. And we don't say, I'm a fierce, courageous, I'm extremely kind, I'm extremely compassionate. Like our bios don't often say that. But now I'm inspired to add some of those words, like how am I, to my bio. Like I'm a loud talker. I'm not going to say that in my bio, but I'm going to say I'm outspoken, or I'm brusque, and like get to know me. If you really want to get to know me, say how you are as well as what and who you are.
I find that intense. I was like, because I don't show my feelings, and sometimes my feelings are a bit depressive, and I fight it. I thought that's brilliant, but I could tell you, it's scary too.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the thing about stories. So I'll share two things. One I didn't teach because we didn't really do a breakout or put us in groups today. One of it, the reason I start to use stories naturally before I realized there was a craft and there were different ways to use it, was because even in interviewing, I found people were much more natural when they described it, not just in bullets in their life. I did this, I had an action, I saved so much money. I wanted to see what they were excited about, what changed their energy in their body, and what relaxed. The other thing is, Kathy, we are all have this. We are so blind to the things that come naturally to us that we're good at and give us light, because we think, ah, I love this. I love asking questions to people and finding about this. This is nothing big deal. Other people, they're challenged. So what you see is obvious to you, using stories to curate that and do an anthropological dig into what you've been doing naturally is where it is. So when I've broken out groups in sessions, one of the things we do is you ask people not to talk when they're listening, which is a huge gift, because how often do we get to people just to focus on us and us only when we're talking? Secondly, not to judge, not to critique, not to say, well, you should have fixed that, because the story sharing is not about theater. What we do ask the listeners to do is say, what are some words that keep coming up for you that really is a theme? Like Michelle said, warrior, I'm outspoken, so the person who'd be in charge of collecting words. Another person would be in charge of saying, here's what I want to hear more of. And then another person would say maybe what they felt. So it's when I have people in that kind of group together, they're feeding on each other because they all have to take turns supporting each other. But it's a powerful thing because they're listening with another set of ears that you normally would. So I think, Kathy, for you, it's doing those stories and collecting stories and starting to run. And when I coach people, when they're going through things, I tell them, I don't care if you like arranging your sock drawer. It's not mundane. There's treasures in that story of, you know, I have the most organized sock drawer, or I'm the one who organized people. You know, all the mundane stories or little things have treasures in them, and they can offer a lot of input. Janet, yes. Unmute yourself, dear. Wait, Janet, why? Okay,
Can
there you go.
you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. You know, when you were saying to do what story's coming up for you,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm thinking of during this time, the thing that's coming up for me is my connection with trees, but it's not really a story. But what's happened, so I want to kind of check with you, is there a story in this? I have been, I have been during this COVID period growing spiritually, like amazingly. And I have this amazing connection with trees where talking to them, I'm becoming one with them, but I'm getting excited about seeing trees. and
Mm-hmm.
um, and it's like I've started to connect with Mother Gaia, who's now talking to me, but there's not a story in there. So I'm saying this has been the most amazingly powerful experience in my life, but I don't know how to make it a story. So I just wanted to, because it's not involving other people, but
It doesn't have to be.
yeah. So I guess it's like, um, I mean, when I experience trees and I look at them and I see the wind blowing through them, and I live on a lake and I'm just looking at these trees, and each one is so unique, and I'm getting so excited about them. It's almost to an orgiastic level of excitement, but it's like, and I know something is going to be happening, and I will be channeling Mother Gaia, but that hasn't started yet. But it's like this period has been just amazing, but it doesn't feel like it's a story.
I'm sure there are little stories of you going, maybe a particular tree that you love
Yeah,
or you
there
think
is.
is quite beautiful.
Okay. I have maybe this is a story with my favorite tree. My favorite tree is a shagbark hickory,
Hmm.
and it's and I connected to this tree because the bark of the tree is sort of separating from the tree itself, and sort of I connected that with, in fact, the trees, that was the first tree I spoke to at that point, and the tree told me, uh, I liked it because I thought of like I'm getting wrinkles, I'm getting older, and this tree that's so old is so wise, and the tree, I guess the tree started talking to me actually, but and then a neighbor came by because walking, and she saw me by this tree, and she was the one who told me this is a hickory tree, and the black squirrel used to live in this tree for years, and it was like connecting with neighbors around the tree. So I don't know, but that's and every day I go to this tree, I walk around the tree 3 times, and then the bark is separating from the tree, and I hold the tree. I hold the bark on the other side because I know the squirrels go up and down, so I don't want to have the squirrel side. And I connect and feel the energy of the tree, and then I find myself moving towards the tree, actually becoming one with the tree. And then I have this incredible experience of I'm one with the tree in that moment. And after I finish that, I thank the tree and I walk away, and my vibrations are like way up high. But again, I don't quite know. It's not yet a story. I don't know.
Sorry.
It sounds like a beautiful poem. The way you describe it. Joan?
Well, you have a beautiful story. Just let it evolve, because all you had to do is open with, during COVID, the news is about so many people dying. And I got this gift of life from the trees. And I embraced life. And I think that's basically like the message, and just talk about how you evolved and spiritually. And there are people, I just put in chat, there's the tree whisperer. There's a few people who actually do this work and teach it, not too many, but you're connecting to something so profound. I think it's bigger than you. So just love it and do it. And the story's there.
And it can be so small and short. It's not about long story. It's your story. It's the story you tell yourself. I mean, and you can share it. So there's no wrong answer to this. It's your special prompt, your thing you connect with. Cynthia, yes?
I waved away a mosquito, but that's okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
No, well, I wanted to say, Janet, and that's no story? You've got to be kidding me. Come on. You've spoken it, and it's right there. It's real. It's big. It's fantastic. That's a great story. Yeah.
Thank you.
We judge a lot. That's the thing. I mean, usually also one of the prompts I always give is work on not editing and censoring the inspirations that come out or the analogies. And that is the biggest challenge for many of us when we're doing group work or when we're doing a story. We want to edit it and whitewash it and make it something else. It doesn't have to. It can be the smallest thing. It could be just you walking out to the garden or to the woods, and that's your type of prayer and how you experience the trees. So it doesn't have to be an action thriller with lots of characters running through, and it can be simple. Look at all the Japanese poems and fables. So much is tied to nature and just really beautiful visuals.
I can tell you one special story, and that's the color of your eyes, Jules.
Oh, thank you.
Oh my God. And it's enhanced by the purple dress. Just stunning.
And I get to see you in person this week.
That's right.
Your workshop. That'd be awesome.
Absolutely.
I realize you've met me before, so I was going to say, and I'm so short.
I'm
always propped up on pillows in these calls.
I'm going to have to go in a moment, but to who was speaking about Kathy, you were speaking about, the flat box, the rectangle, the person, not in person. And then Angelo in the last group talked about the fact that there is energy that is transmitted. If we really know that there is an energetic transmission that can occur over time and space, and if we know it and we have the intention to open up our hearts to connect with each other, even in this way, it is powerful. Just like healing can take place long distance.
Yep.
So can in our communications, if we really realize it and set it in motion, it's a very powerful connection that can happen. It's correct. It's not the same as giving somebody a hug, but it's very powerful.
Yes.
And so maybe if you get in touch with that part, you will have an easier time bridging the apparent separation gap.
I really appreciated that thought. Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful.
I want to say thank you.
Well, thank you.
Pure and simple. Thank you.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Well, super. Anyone else have anything to add?
I would guide you to save the chat when you download it.
Yeah.
Save the chat. There's some precious nuggets in there.
So you saved, you are recording this video, Jules, for yourself?
Not for me. Kathy was. So
Kathy was saving it. Okay. Well, it's worth saving.
Yeah.
Must wrangle with the children. Michelle, bye.
Bye, Cindy. Bye, Michelle.
Bye-bye. Thank
Julianne,
you so much.
Joan had requested if you could save us the prompts, the points on that one slide.
Yes. Yes, for sure. I will send that out.
Great. Thank you so much. Well, thank you for ladies' profound thoughts. Yes, John.
Thank-
Thank you all. Joan,
Thanks for all showing up, and
Cynthia.
hope to see you
Wait, I
all.
have one last question. The book, Jules, are you
Yes.
saying Queens, New York, or Queens from Australia? What are you talking about?
Jamaica, Queens, New York.
Okay. But
As
it
if
made
my
it-
accent doesn't
but-
scream that every
Yeah,
so
well,
often.
I'm from Long Island and lived in Manhattan, and I did a time in Queens, and it was the Queens Psychic Club, and I told everyone, there's such, it's a crazy place, but it was a very deep psychic place when I was there. Just to let you
Really?
know, we had the Queens Psychic Club. I met more intuitives and healers there than in Manhattan, and it's a very, I'll tell you, it vibrates what you're doing. So the titles make sense, okay?
Okay, well, you know what? Everything old is new again, and you got to leave it to get back to where you started.
Yeah.
And you're right. It was a crazy place, but I've learned a lot since then.
Very
so,
intense in many cultures.
Are you going to
absolutely.
give
And
us
that's part of
a
the-
lead as to how to get your book?
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm going to be putting on Amazon. I will be sending it
That'd
out
be nice.
in the
Good.
different groups and everything when it comes to it. We're just at the final
Yeah.
point of editing and sharing it. So
Yeah, maybe you
no
can.
stranger. You guys are on my list for sure.
Okay, great.
It's a gift. I'm excited. I can't believe I'm saying this in full sentences. So it's been a long time coming. Thank you.
Congratulations. Okay, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you
Pamela.
so
Bye,
much.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All the best. Cheers.